Hey guys, Sean here and welcome to the F1 Word, powered by planetf1.com. Now the brand new Formula One season is just around the corner, so it's almost time for all the talking to stop and we can all start enjoying the thing we really want to see, the actual racing. But there is still just enough time for me to make a complete fool of myself with a little bit more speculation. Yes, that's right, today I'm making my final predictions for the 2025 F1 season. As always, these are just a bit of fun, so please do not take them too seriously. But if you do disagree with my picks, which anyone who's been around at the channel for a while will tell you probably should, then you can let me know yours in the comment section down below. And you know what? To make it even easier for you, I'll even pin a comment with a list of the, topics I've chosen to predict. But anyway, shall we get on with it? I think that's a great idea. For the first and probably not the last time in this video, testing doesn't always tell us the full story, but it does appear that McLaren enter the new campaign as the early season favourites. Their one-lap pace looked solid and their race pace was also impressive, with all the usual caveats loaded on top of that statement. It wasn't perfect, but given that Bahrain is a track that in recent years hasn't necessarily suited the McLaren, it's very hard to argue with those who say they will have the advantage in the early races at the very least. So it's also kind of hard to look past them for the win in Australia, but pace or no pace, nothing is a guarantee. Don't forget, Albert Park is a totally different track to Bahrain and is a bit of an early season outlier in a lot of ways. Plus the weather can be a bit unpredictable and so could easily throw a spanner in the works for the Woking squad. That said, based solely on the potentially unreliable testing info we have, I'm still going with a McLaren win in Australia, but perhaps more heart than head, I'll go with Oscar Piastri taking the win on home soil to send his fans into absolute meltdown and become the first Australian driver to win an F1 World Championship event at their home circuit. What a story that would be to kick off the season. Even if McLaren do start the season on top, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll stay that way until the end of the year. The development race will, for the most part, take place across the first half of the season as teams move more and more of their focus onto the new 2026 regulations. And that could mean the pack shuffles a bit in that first phase of 2025. However, with a new technical directive, the very catchily named TD018, which will see teams put through more stringent flexibility tests, is coming into force from the Spanish Grand Prix, and that's something which could also shuffle the pack a little bit. So my prediction here is that the team who starts the season as potentially the dominant force won't end the year on top, perhaps in a reverse of what happened last season, whereas I'm sure you remember Max Verstappen won all those races early on, but McLaren, Ferrari and at some weekends even Mercedes had the pace to beat Red Bull. And if that happens again, we could be in for a cracking year. So just to confirm, if McLaren start as the early season favourites, I'm saying that from Spain that won't necessarily be the case and we could see a Ferrari, fingers crossed, or Red Bull taking the fight to whoever has the advantage of the championship, but it could all change again in the second half of the season. So I'm up for that. Bring it on. Moving back onto some more, normal predictions. Is normal a thing in Formula One these days? I don't think so, but let's just go with it. Who will win the most races in 2025? Which driver? This is actually tough because I do think we'll see multiple different winners from multiple different teams. And I don't mean, two teams winning races. I'm thinking at least one from each of the top 4 teams, if not all 8 winning. What a story that would be. What a season that would be. Big ask, of course, for drivers like Kimi, Antonelli and Liam Lawson, but you just never know. And yes, I will quite happily admit a lot of this is pre-season hype, but that's just the way it is. Prior to pre-season testing, I would have said Max Verstappen for most wins this season because, well, he's Max Verstappen. I know, expert analysis. But we saw last year that he is capable of winning races even in a car that isn't the outright fastest. The thing is, though, even though testing times and data do to a point have to be taken with a pinch of salt, McLaren, again, do look really strong. And whilst I fully expect Ferrari and Red Bull to be at the very least a lot closer, it's hard to look past the Papaya team for most wins. However, as we saw last year, Lando Norris didn't always snatch the win even at weekends where he had the quicker car, and there is still the possibility that if they are doing battle for the title, for example, things could boil over between Norris and Piastri. So that has got to be taken into account for sure, and that could leave the door open for a Verstappen, a Leclerc, a Hamilton, or whoever to swoop in and take wins, especially if the team faff around again with their papaya rules. Look, all of this is a very long-winded way of saying that I'm picking Lando Norris for most wins whilst also acknowledging that he has shown in the past he has a tendency to, and by the way, I hate this phrase, but I'm going to use it anyway, bottle things. Yeah, sorry, and that's something he must iron out if he wants to, 1, win more races, and 2, wants to mount a serious title challenge. And by the way, if, as everyone keeps telling me, we do have a super competitive season, most wins may only be something like 3 wins. So I'm not saying he's going to win 18 of them. So let's get that straight right now. A nice, easy one next that I can answer with a lot less waffle, or at least I'll try. Will all drivers score at least 1 point this season? I'm saying yes. Why? Well, despite a shockingly bad year last season, Sauber still scored, and even though they will be massively focused on next season already, completely understandably with Audi coming in, their car should be closer to the pack as the field continues to converge, so they should be more in the mix. Should. Plus, got to be said, if the pack is tighter, there is a greater chance of incidents, and that could open the door for them too. So I don't see why Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto won't score at least 1 point each. The only thing I will caveat this with, though, is if one team makes a change to their driver lineup and the incoming driver, or potentially in the case of, for example, Jack Doohan, the outgoing driver, only gets a handful of races, which means fewer chances to score points. So I guess the prediction is really that all full-time drivers will score in 2025, and yes, to confirm, that was less waffle by my standards at least. With all that said, I am predicting that Gabriel Bortoleto and Sauber will finish bottom of the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships respectively. That is absolutely not a dig at Bortoleto, by the way. He showed us all last year that he is a very quick driver and has a ton of potential. However, I do expect Sauber to still have the weakest car, and given how excellent he was last year and his experience, I also fully expect Nico Hulkenberg to come out on top of the 2 Sauber drivers. I'd be very surprised if it went the other way. Here we go then, time for the title predictions, starting with the Constructors' Championship, and apologies if I repeat anything I've already said in this video in these next 2 parts. So, I am perhaps unsurprisingly going with McLaren to retain the title. Again, they look like they will have the edge right out the gate, and I expect them to rack up a serious number of points early doors, much like Red Bull did last year. The only difference is that McLaren have a very strong driver lineup, and I'd be very surprised if either of them fell away like Sergio Perez did last year, resulting in a team losing out on the title. You never know, but I'd be surprised. There is a huge question mark hanging over the technical directive I talked about earlier, which comes into force from the Spanish Grand Prix and how that may affect teams. But even if McLaren did, hypothetically speaking, dominate the first part of the season and the new TD resulting in them losing their advantage, that race in Spain is round 9 of the season, so their lead could be very strong by that point. Now let's address the elephant in the room, at least that's what my mum used to call me. My heart is absolutely screaming Ferrari. My mum didn't used to call me that, by the way. That sounds like a terrible childhood. That was a joke. Anyway, back to it. My heart is screaming Ferrari, but I'm not falling into that trap again. I've done that too many times. So for once, when it comes to these pre-season predictions, I'm going to follow my head and stick with McLaren. Of course, don't totally rule out Ferrari, Red Bull, or even Mercedes, but I doubt Merc are in a position to win either title this year, and although I think he will be closer to Verstappen than some may think, Liam Lawson is a massive unknown. Throw in Ferrari's ability to Dick Dastardly their way out of winning, and you can see why I've gone with McLaren. What I would add, though, is that of the other teams likely to be contending at the sharp end, Ferrari, with their driver lineup, are probably better equipped to challenge McLaren for that Constructors' title than anybody else. McLaren versus Ferrari for the title? Oh, what is this, the 90s? I'd be totally up for that one. And to make this a little bit more interesting again, I'll say the top 3 will be McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull, which as I say that, I realise is exactly the same as last season, so perhaps not all that interesting at all. Oh well, I was hardly going to go with Haas, was I? So that's my top 3. As for the drivers, this is a slightly different story. Look, I don't care how gloomy a picture Red Bull want to paint. I do not believe for 1 second that Max Verstappen is completely out of the running for the title. And there is still a bit of my gut that tells me they might be a lot closer than people are predicting. He may well be right in the mix. What I'm saying is, write him off at your peril. That said, as he proved last year, if you have an extremely strong start to the season, and even when you don't have a great car, you still manage to pick up consistent podiums and top-end points, you can still hang on to take the crown. So perhaps, again, not a massive surprise based on how this video has gone to this point. I am going to pick a McLaren driver for the title, but which one? That's the big question. I am a big fan of Oscar Piastri, and so I would love for him to take the team's first driver's title since 2008. The thing that stops me making that call, though, is that although not as realistic a prospect as the media tried to sell it as, Norris has sort of been in a title fight now and has at least battled with Verstappen at the front. He also has a fair bit more experience, and so whilst it pains me to say it with absolutely no hate towards Lando whatsoever, if it's going to be a McLaren driver, I think it will just about be Norris. Then again, as touched on earlier, if he makes the errors he did last year, that might leave the door wide open for Piastri to waltz in and take the title. Or he can drive in and take it, whichever he prefer. And now I've said that, do you know what? Screw it. I ignored my heart for the constructors. Let's follow it for the drivers. No, not Leclerc or Hamilton. I will say Piastri for the drivers' championship, and I'll be taking no further questions, Your Honour. Just go with it. If you want me to pick a top 3, by the way, pre-editing, there was a massive pause there. I'll go Piastri for the title, Norris for second, Leclerc third. No, because Verstappen. Oh, for goodness sake. I can't do a top 3. There we go. Piastri for the title. Done. And it wouldn't, by the way, be a batch of Sean's terrible predictions without a bold one. Yeah, I am hopping on the Williams hype train and saying that the team will finish 5th in the Constructors' Championship come the end of the season. Totally confident on that one. And do you know what else? If we get a bit of drama at a race or two and they can capitalise on it, I'll even say we see either Alex Albon or Carlos Sainz on the podium at least once in 2025. And no, I haven't stopped taking my meds. Whatever happens, though, please do remember that these are just my picks and they are just a bit of fun ahead of the new season, so please do not take them too seriously at all. And if you do disagree, that's fine, but be respectful and also let me know your picks in the comment section down below. And if I've been a bit sarky and giddy in this one, it's because it's race week and I'm recording this and I cannot bloody wait. Enough talk, let's go racing. That is it for this one then, but I will be back soon with some more content as always. And if you are after the latest news, analysis and reaction from the world of Formula One, head on over to planetf1.com. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.